The Porsche Cayman is sleek, agile, refined, and affordable, at least by Porsche standards. But is it worth picking up? Let's take a deeper look and find out. The Cayman is a very well balanced vehicle, and you'll notice that right when you get behind the wheel. There are no excuses, no flaws, and no regrets in this car. It's all about harmony and performance. The body is made from steel and aluminum and has a classic shape that blends the elegance and the sportiness. Unlike the 911, the engine is mounted in the middle of the vehicle, behind the seats, and in front of the rear axle. This, along with the boxer layout of the engine, gives the Cayman a low center of gravity and a decent weight distribution that allows you to brake just a little bit later into the corners. The chassis is stiff and responsive, and the suspension is adaptive. The interior is ergonomic with leather seats, a leather dashboard, and a leather-wrapped steering wheel, but it does feel a little cramped. The tightness of the interior is even noticeable when racing in VR. There is not a lot of room in this car. The center console has a few buttons and knobs that control the essential functions, such as the climate, radio, and the driving modes. The instrument cluster has the tachometer right in the center, so it dominates your view, showing the performance nature of this vehicle. The Cayman is predictable and fun. It lets you run deeper into the corners than most cars, and never really gets out of line. The Cayman has been through 4 generations, each with its own distinctive features and improvements. The first generation was the 987 and was introduced in 2006 as the coupe version of the Boxer. It had a 2.7 liter or a 3.4 liter flat 6 and produced 245 or 295 horsepower respectively. It had a 5-speed or a 6-speed manual transmission or a 5-speed Tiptronic automatic transmission. It could go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 5.4 seconds and reach a top speed of 275 kilometers an hour. It also had a sportier version known as the Cayman S and a lightweight version known as the Cayman R. The second generation, the 981, was launched in 2012 and featured a new design, a new platform, and a new engine. It had a 2.7 or a 3.4 engine that produced 275 horsepower or 325 respectively, and had a 6-speed manual transmission or a 7-speed PDK dual clutch automatic transmission. The 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time decreased to 5 seconds flat, and the top speed increased to 283 kilometers per hour. It also had a more powerful version, the Cayman GTS, and a track-oriented version, the Cayman GT4, which is the version that's found in the game. The third generation, or the 718, was introduced in 2016, which is the generation we're dealing with, and featured a controversial change, a turbocharged flat 4 engine. It also had a 2-liter or a 2.5-liter flat 4 that produced 300 or 350 horsepower. This version came with a 6-speed manual transmission or a 7-speed PDK dual clutch automatic and could go from 0 to 60 in just 4.6 seconds and reach a top speed of 285 kilometers per hour. So a little quicker in both respects, even though the motor was smaller. But there were other versions available as well, such as the more sporty Cayman T and the more hardcore Cayman GT4, which is what we drive in Gran Turismo 7. The fourth generation, which was released in 2020, featured a return of the flat 6 engine, but only for the top models. It had a 4-liter flat 6 that produced 400 horsepower or 420, depending on the version you purchased, and was available with a 6-speed manual or, again, the 7-speed dual clutch transmission. The 2020 would go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 4.4 seconds and could reach a top speed of 395 kilometers per hour, which is getting close to that 200 mile an hour mark of 320 kilometers per hour. It also had a more luxurious version, the Cayman GTS, and a more exclusive version, the Cayman GT4 RS. Starting to sound like Porsche is paying attention to Subaru with these letters and numbers. Let's take a quick moment to listen to that engine's deep roar. I love how they added the little bit of crackle to the end. On the road, the Cayman is a joy to drive. It handles like a dream with precise steering, a smooth gearbox, and lively throttle. It brakes like a champ with a firm pedal and strong bite, which creates short braking distances. The car feels light and nimble despite weighing over 3,100 pounds. The biggest downside is it's not very practical. The Cayman has a small trunk and a small frunk, and not very much space for anything else. Some people might like the simplicity, but it would be difficult to own as an only car. Switching over to our engine swap variant, let's take a quick listen to that V8 rumble. The Cayman is more than just a sports car. It's also a masterpiece of engineering and design. It is the result of over 15 years of development, and it shows the evolution of Porsche's philosophy and vision. It is a car that combines the best of both worlds. It combines performance with efficiency and emotion with logic. It is a car that defies stereotypes and expectations, and the competition. The Porsche Cayman is a remarkable car that delivers unparalleled fun, stunning looks, and cutting-edge technology. It is one of the best cars you can buy, and one of the best cars you can drive, period. But it's also a niche car that sacrifices some practicality, efficiency, and affordability for the sake of speed and prestige. It's not for everyone, but for those who want the ultimate experience, it's hard to beat. Now let's go ahead and take it over to Tokyo and see how it handles our lap. Fully built, the 2016 Porsche Cayman GT4 punches well above its weight. The car sells for 130,000 credits in Brand Central, but it's a great car to challenge the multi-million-dollar machines that are found in the hypercar parade. With the midship layout, the weight of the GT4 is slightly to the rear end, allowing you to brake a little deeper into the corners than a lot of the competitors. But it doesn't suffer from the pendulum effect that the rear engine mounted 911 can present. Fully built with the stock engine, the GT4 produces 595 horsepower, 383 foot-pounds of torque, and it's propelling a very well-balanced chassis that hits the scales at 2,304 pounds. I was actually able to hit 213 miles per hour on the straights, so it's also a very impressive car in the straights as well as the corners. The fuel economy was on the average side, and I was able to get about 5 laps in our current race format. You won't be using this car to outpace your opponents and skipping the pits, but it's not going to put you at a disadvantage either. The tires, on the other hand, were treated pretty well, and we saw about 5% of the wear hitting the front tires and about 10% hitting the rear, so the fuel should be your limiting factor. Although this car is great to drive, even in VR it feels cramped, so it's something that you might take a little getting used to, and I actually was initially trying to adjust my seating position until I realized that that's just where you sit in this car. And I'm only 5'9", so I'm not a really huge towering person by any means. The Porsche Cayman GT4 ended up crossing the line at 1 minute 55 seconds .870, which put it right behind the Golf with the engine swap and just in front of the XJ13, but it's worth noting that both of those cars have a lower performance point. Let's go ahead and see how the engine swap version holds up. Swapping in the Windsor 351 into the Cayman turns this car into an absolute animal, but the chassis is so well designed that it stays predictable and fun to drive despite the massive power jumps. The horsepower and torque almost triple on this car. The horsepower ends up at 1,408 while the torque comes in at 1,018. The extra cylinders of the V8 do add additional weight as well. There's an extra 84 pounds to carry around, bringing the overall weight to 2,388 pounds. But with all that power, a little extra weight over the rear wheels is welcome. On the straights, I was able to get the swap GT4 over 283 miles per hour, but it never felt like it was too much for the car. I do prefer the engine sound of the flat 6, but I'm not going to throw this one out of the garage for something as trivial as that. Even though the car feels like it was gripping on the same level as the stock setup, there was significantly more wear to the rear tires. I saw the same 5% to the fronts, but it went up to 40% wear to the rear tires. The car also used all of its fuel for the 3-lap race, so you're going to end up pitting more often. It does end up with just under 850 performance points after the swap, so it may find itself in a tougher racing class, but the car can always be detuned to fit whatever your needs are. This is an increase of 66 points over the stock engine fully built out. I still say it's worth it. The Cayman GT4 ended up crossing the line at 1 minute 44 seconds .783. That actually puts it in second place just behind the Valkyrie and just in front of the Huayra. So this little entry-level Porsche goes a long way. Anyway, I'm very grateful for all of you for watching. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content, and we will catch you in the next one.